Welcome to Ghostly.
Is the Bastille Prison haunted?
Ghostly is a podcast that comes out every other week. In each episode, we take a ghost story or paranormal event and look into its complete history. Rebecca then gives us evidence proving that the story is real, and my job is to debate those pieces of evidence and get you, the listener, prepared to vote on if it's real or not. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button. And as always, we're your host. I'm Pat.
And I'm Rebecca.
So, wow, we are carrying on the Paris thing. I promise there's only one more Paris episode.
I mean, I'm loving it. I hope the listeners are. I know it's we don't typically kind of center on a place for so long, but hopefully we're all in the throes of Paris right now with the Olympics. So the opening ceremony, you heard that the guy that was carrying the flame, the lantern, whatever, that was dressed like someone out of Assassin's Creed, was someone out of Assassin's Creed. Yeah, the guy that was doing the parkour all over the city.
Parkour.
Well, actually, and I'm going to say this story is maybe a hint for our next episode.
Okay.
So, if as you all, many of you probably know, Notre Dame was had a fire and is being reconstructed right now. Unfortunately, they couldn't finish it before the games. But I guess the people who wrote Assassin's Creed, there's been several Assassin's Creed games, and
this one was Assassin's Creed Unit.
I don't remember.
I want to say
I've played it, but but it takes place during the French Revolution.
Okay, yeah,
and
it does.
A big part of it is in Notre Dame, and so they had gone in and done like extensive 3D imaging of Notre Dame, and they basically, after the fire, they gave all of that to the French government so that they could reconstruct the cathedral.
What they had,
So. But what made me think of this episode during the opening ceremonies was Marie Antoinette's head.
Oh, yeah. She lost her head at Bastille?
I don't know if it was at Bastille, but that's like the prison where they were kept.
Sure,
so,
absolutely. Well, this episode reminds me of the Tower of London.
Yes.
Because it's very similar. It is a palace that was that became a prison.
Yeah.
And that was its like only use for 100 years or something like that. All right, so we're just going to get into it. This is typically the time that we would do shout outs on Ghostly. There are no shout outs today, but if you wanted to get a shout out on Ghostly, all you got to do is give us a review on Apple Podcasts. We always prefer those 5-star reviews, but we'll read any and all reviews that we receive. Like if you want to say happy birthday to somebody, you can say it in a 5-star review and we will read that. The second way is to become a member on Patreon. Just go to ghostlypodcast.com and click on Patreon in the menu bar. We have a lot of different tiers to choose from. Some pretty basic and some pretty extravagant. You know, we allow you to be able to attend live Ghostly sessions.
Absolutely. And again, if you want more Ghostly, if you're thinking, man, this waiting every 2 weeks is annoying, I'd like some more episodes, we release at least one episode a month. Sometimes in the past we've done more, and sometimes they're interviews or we talk about some kind of adjacent topics, but we actually just recorded an extra Paris episode.
Yeah. So if you're loving all the Paris, Patreon is where to go.
Absolutely. So we do not have any listener mail this week. And I apologize because I have not been to our mailbox in a few weeks. So if you did send us something there, I will go this week.
Yeah, sometimes real life catches up with us.
It does. But we have lots of ways, right, for them to share their
absolutely.
stories.
One of the easiest ways is just email us at info@ghostlypodcast.com. That goes to both me and Rebecca.
It does.
Or you can use the contact us form right on ghostlypodcast.com, which also goes to ghostlypodcast.com. And didn't you receive an email yesterday from somebody?
I did, but it was actually, so I shout out to Angela, I believe, who we Pat and I were at an art fair yesterday, and I decided to buy a piece of art.
Yeah.
And we forgot Angela was gonna bring the art to me, and I forgot to give her my phone number so she could text to let me know.
Probably be something she would need too. Right?
But I had in fact told her about Ghostly.
Yeah, of course.
So hopefully
always be promoting.
She's on a road trip right now or soon, and we'll listen to this episode. But anyway, so she found Ghostly on our website and sent a contact form and was like, "Hey, here's my number. Let me know yours. I can let you know when I'm on my way."
Yeah, that's awesome. So that is definitely a way that you can get a hold of us. Or one of our favorite ways is to get ghost stories in the actual mail, like old school mail.
Yes.
And you could just send that. You actually have to put a stamp on it, maybe one of those forever stamps. Mm-hmm. P.O. Box number 264, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. And you're not going to remember that. And I don't repeat it twice. So just go to the bottom of ghostlypodcast.com if you want our address.
Absolutely. You could also DM us on any of those socials out there.
Yeah. We will accept anything right now because we're desperate for listener mail.
All right, let's talk about polls. Those we do have.
All right.
So the last episode we talked about we got some people writing in about the pronunciation, and I don't know that it helped because I need the audio. But Père Lachaise Cemetery.
One of those. Maybe.
They try so hard to write it out, and I'm sorry. But we had yes 58%.
Oh wow!
And no 42%.
Ooh, another victory you just squeaked out. I get my skeptics
a little bit more than squeaked out that.
I got to get my skeptics to stand up and vote for what they don't believe in. The overall rating, which is something that people can do now, they can vote between 1 and 10, 1 being the least, 10 being the most haunted. Mm-hmm. This was a 4.4, so it's around in the middle, but that is actually pretty high.
That is pretty
us.
high, actually. Yeah. Because most people don't give ones and tens. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like things cancel out each other.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so I do have a ghost story.
Ooh, you
us.
do?
I
do.
Spooky
story from Rebecca?
It's spooky, but also, I don't know, touching, I hope.
Okay.
All
right. It's time for a spooky tale from Rebecca.
The last few months have been awful. The worst, really. My husband, James, was killed in a car accident 3 months ago, and my children and I have not been the same since. He was such a light in our lives, and everyone's lives. Before he died, we had planned a family vacation to France. He was a history buff and couldn't wait to see the places he had read about and to introduce our children, who are 11 and 9, to an experience he had always wanted to have. At first I thought there is no way we would go, but after the first month, the kids and I decided we should do it. This would be a way for us to be close to him and honor his memory. One of the places we made sure to visit was the Palace de la Bastille. I'm not sure if it's place, if it's supposed to, I don't know, but that's what it's called. The former site of the famous prison. James was obsessed with the French Revolution and talked a lot about this as one of the places he really wanted to visit. So there we were yesterday in a bustling area of Paris, cars whizzing by and all people around us. We decided to just take our time and look around at what is left there and just think about him. The kids were so sad at this point, and I had no idea what to say to make them feel better, or if I should even try. I let them explore on their own, obviously not too far from me, when all of a sudden, they both ran up to me. They were talking a mile a minute. I could hardly even understand what they were saying. They just kept talking about a man they saw and were trying to drag me over to where they had been. When we got there, no one was there. At least not whoever it was they were talking about. My daughter finally calmed down enough to tell me what happened. They were both just standing, not talking, feeling sad. All of a sudden, a strange man was just there and said, "Don't be sad. Your father loves you and he is proud of you." They both looked at him amazed. But when they started to really look at him and realize how strangely he looked, he was just gone. That's when they came to look for me. I'm not sure who he was, but they have both been just a little less sad since this happened. I don't know what to think about what or who it was, if it was anything, but I'm just going to say I'm grateful.
Wow. So how much of that is based on actual fact?
Well, pretty much the story is my story, but the concept of the man is one that is told.
Wow. I don't know if you guys can hear over the recording. Probably not. I'll probably do a great job at editing this out. But there is what I call a sun shower, which means the sun is up and it's raining.
Yes, it is raining.
Now, I've also heard recently that somebody calls it a monkey's birthday.
This is not a phrase I have heard.
I want to know what you guys call it when it rains and the sun is still up.
I call it, let's look for the rainbow.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to get to the Pat Facts.
Pat's Facts. From a skeptic point of view. Pat's Facts. He presents it all to you. Pat's Facts. Facts.
All right, we're just going to get right into the Pat Facts.
Pat Facts.
Okay, so we start this with the 100 Years' War. That was considered a conflict. I don't know if you knew.
Not an actual war.
It wasn't actually a war at all. And it lasted more than 100 years, so it wasn't just 100 years.
Yeah.
So it's just a lie. I don't know. It's both of it's a lie. It was between the French and the English between 1337 and 1453.
Yeah, in case, spoilers, England and France, not always the best of friends.
Yeah, they probably still, have a little resentment towards each other. The Bastille was built between 1370 and 1383 during the reign of King Charles V as part of the defense of Paris.
Wow.
Or Paris.
Yes.
Yeah. Prior to the Bastille, the main royal castle in Paris was the Louvre.
The Louvre?
The Louvre, yeah.
Was a palace. I did not. Or castle. I didn't
It was a
realize
castle,
that.
yeah.
Huh, okay.
In the west of the capital, but the city had expanded. By the middle of the 14th century, and the eastern side was now exposed to the English attack.
Gotcha.
So they exposed the one side that they shouldn't expose. Mm-hmm. They protected themselves against the west, but not against the east. Charles instructed Hugues Abrot, yeah, the new provost, to build a much larger fortification on the same site as Marcel's Bastille.
Man, I'm sorry. I took Spanish, not French.
Yeah, right. Don't you wish you did now? Work began in 1370 with another pair of towers being built behind the first Bastille, followed by 2 towers to the north and finally 2 towers to the south. All in all, there's 8 towers, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Or there was 8 towers, yeah. I should say. The fortress was probably not finished by the time that Charles died in 1380 and was completed by his son, Charles VI. Garrisoned by a capital, a knight, 8 squires, and 10 crossbowmen, the Bastille was encircled with ditches fed by the River Seine and faced with stone. Historian Sidney Toy has described the Bastille as one of the most powerful fortifications of the period and the most important fortification in late medieval Paris.
Wow. So, because when I think of it more as the prison. And so I didn't
Yeah.
realize like how big it was and what it was
No,
really
no,
originally
it's-
built for.
I didn't realize it either. I kept looking. I was, doing research for the Bastille, and I kept coming up with the castle. And I'm like, no, I want the prison, not the castle.
Right.
Why do they name a prison and a castle the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
But I realized then.
There you go.
So during the 15th century, the French kings continued to face threats both from the English and other areas around the way.
Mm-hmm.
The Bastille was strategically vital during that period, both because of its role as a royal fortress and safe haven inside the capital, and because it controlled a critical route in and out of Paris. Despite the improved Parisian defenses, Henry V of England captured Paris in 1420, and the Bastille was seized and garrisoned by the English for the next 16 years.
The British and the French just take over each other's territory all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
There was a long time early on where all of the noble people in England just spoke French because the French took over,
Yeah.
England. And so, they just keep going back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, not anymore, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, hey, you don't know. This world is crazy. All kinds of things can happen. The English made more use of the Bastille as a prison. So this is when it first started to be used as a prison.
Gotcha. Okay.
In 1430, there was a minor rebellion when some prisoners overpowered a sleeping guard and attempted to seize control of the fortress. This incident includes the first reference to a dedicated gaoler, or what we call a warden, at the Bastille.
Okay.
Paris was finally recaptured by Charles VII of France in 1436. When the French king re-entered the city, his enemies in Paris fortified themselves in the Bastille after a siege, then eventually ran out of food, surrendered, and were allowed to leave the city after the payment of a ransom.
Well, that was nice of them.
Yeah, but they still didn't have control yet. They eventually did get control, though.
Yeah.
The Bastille was being used to hold prisoners once again by the reign of Louis XI, who began to use it extensively as a state penitentiary.
Okay.
An early escape from the Bastille during this period was Anton de Chambans, Count of de Martin, and a member of the League of the Public Weal, who was imprisoned by Louis and escaped by boat in 1465. You can just hop on a boat to get out of there.
I guess. There you go.
During the 16th century, the area around the Bastille developed further. Early modern Paris continued to grow, and by the end of the century, it had around 250,000 inhabitants and was one of the most popular cities in Europe. Though still largely contained within its old city walls, open countryside remained beyond the Bastille.
Mm-hmm.
Bastille was finally officially converted into a state prison in the 17th century by Récollet, who was King Louis XIII's chief minister.
So this is interesting that for hundreds of years, it was informally a prison. We have a warden, we do put some people there, but it's still also a castle and
all
place
medieval.
where we keep, soldiers.
Sure.
But then officially it's okay, no, we're just making it a prison.
All medieval castles and forts, even in G.I. Joe, they have prisons inside there. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But
they can only hold one or two people in the G.I. Joe prisons, but still. They have them. At that time, it primarily housed political prisoners, of course, but also religious prisoners, seditious writers, and young rakes held at the request of the families.
Wow,
so
seditious writers.
Seditious writers,
right.
Yeah.
So against the state.
Yeah, absolutely. It began to acquire a poor reputation when it became the main prison for those taken under letters de sachet issued by the King of France. So that is letters of the sign or signet, were letters signed by the King of France and countersigned by one of the ministers and closed with a royal seal. They contained orders directly from the king, often to enforce actions and judgments that could not be appealed.
So we're gonna just bypass any kind of court system.
We don't want to go court. You're just going to go to jail forever.
Gotcha. So this is basically the king's private prison.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
By the late 18th century, the building was made up of 8 closed packed towers, around 24 meters or 80 feet high, surrounding 2 courtyards and the armory. The prisoners were held within the 5 to 7 story towers, each having a room around 15 feet across and containing various articles of furniture. They probably had a desk, a bed, those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't know,
maybe a du toilette.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking this is an old castle, so
yeah, you never know. I don't know.
Yeah.
The infamous dungeons, the oozing, vermin-infested subterranean cells, were no longer in use.
Oh, well, that was nice of them.
Yeah, since the respective reign of Louis the 15th and Louis the 16th, who both worked on reforming the penal system in France. The governor of the prison was given a daily allowance per prisoner. The amount depending upon their status from the 19 livres per diem. For scientists and academics, down to 3 for commoners. So they got 19 for if they were scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only 3
or studied people.
So interesting. I mean, sadly, we have some prisons in private run prisons in the States where they get paid. I think all prisoners, you kind of, I mean, how else are you going to do it? You get paid by the number of prisoners because obviously that makes sense. It costs you this much to house this prisoner.
But usually they block it though. So let's say 1 to 5,000 would get this amount.
Yeah.
So if you have 1,000, you're doing great.
Yeah.
But if you have 5,000, it's hardly enough.
Right. Right. I don't know. Yeah. You got to watch you're not incentivizing.
Yeah. The confrontation between the commoners and the Ancien Regime ultimately led to the people of Paris storming the Bastille on July 14th, 1789.
If I could, I mean, I'm not going to sing the music. But we're all hearing Les Miserables in our heads right now.
Yeah.
I have no idea what kind of, licensing that would be, needed.
Yeah, we would need a lot.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. But just that's what you're hearing. If you want to go listen to it right now, that's fine. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and this was following several days of disturbances, by the way.
Yes, disturbances.
Yeah. At this point, the prison was nearly empty, with only 7 inmates, 4 counterfeiters, 2 madmen, and a young aristocrat who had displeased his father, let's say.
Wow.
The regular garrison consisted of about 80 invalids, veteran soldiers no longer capable of service in the field to the invalids, under Governor Bernard René de Launay.
Yep.
A crowd of around 600 people gathered outside around mid-morning time, calling for the surrender of the prison, the removal of the guns, and the release of the arms and gunpowder. 2 people chosen to represent those gathered were invited into the fortress and slow negotiations began. But in the early afternoon, the crowd broke into the undefended outer courtyard and the chains on the drawbridge to the inner courtyard were cut.
Whoa.
Guns were fired until Delaunay ordered a ceasefire. Despite his surrender demands being refused, he capitulated, and the victors swept into liberate the fortress at around 5:30 p.m.
Yeah, they were not.
So he was able to hold them off just long enough.
Yeah.
Eventually, having the Bastille as a prison outlived its usefulness, though, and it was demolished. On June 16th, 1792, the area occupied the Bastille was turned into a square celebrating liberty, and a column would be erected there. The first stone was laid by Pelot. However, construction never actually took place, and a fountain was built instead in 1793.
That's interesting. so there was this huge, I mean, first it was a castle and a defense, and then it was a prison. And with the revolution, I mean, which happened just after
the revolution,
American Revolution, the idea that it was like, you know what, like this thing represents such like awfulness. People that were kept there weren't necessarily criminals; they were criminals against the crown. Yeah, and so they're like, we're taking this down. We're gonna just use these materials, I'm sure, for other things, and we'll put up a memorial, to remind, those in power, probably, like.
And memorial they did put up. In fact, in 1808, as part of several urban improvement projects for Paris, Napoleon planned to have a monument in the shape of an elephant built there. Wow. The Elephant of the Bastille, he called it. Huh. It was designed to be 78 feet high. That's really high. And to be cast from the bronze of cannons taken from the Spanish. Access to the top was to be achieved by a stairway set into one of its legs. Wow. However, only a full-scale plaster model was built. Victor Hugo immortalized the monument in the novel Les Mis, where it is used as a shelter by Gavroche. Yes. The monument was demolished in 1846. Okay. The current Palais de la Bastille is located on the former fort site. In addition to the July column, it is also home to the Opera Bastille. Opera Bastille. The large ditch that was surrounding the area behind the former fort has been transformed into a marina for pleasure boats. The Bassin de l'Arsenal to the south, which is bordered by the Boulevard de la Bastille. On Thursdays and Sundays, a large open-air market occupies part of the park to the north of the Palais de la Bastille. Along the Boulevard Richard Lenoir, consumers can find fresh fruit, fish, meat, cheese, and bread, along with clothing and typical flea market items. So it's like a farmer's market.
I'm thinking of, hopefully a lot of you must have been to farmer's markets, but
or a French market.
Oh, yes. But in Madison, Wisconsin, if you've ever been there, they have a really great big farmer's market that happens on, I think it's Saturdays or Sundays. I don't remember, but it's like that. It's in the city center, and it's kind of, it reminds me, it's what I would picture.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some undemolished remains of one of the towers of the fort that was discovered during an excavation of the for the metro, which is their rail, service, in 1899, and were moved to a park, the Square Henri Galli, a few hundred meters away, where they are displayed today. The original outline of the fort is also marked on the pavement of streets and pathways that pass over its former location in the form of special paving stones.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
I don't. I mean, this is, other than I know there were some famous prisoners there. It not Marie Antoinette. I apologize if I said that. I don't think, or I was thinking that, but I mean, it's one of those places where I think has been kind of romanticized. That
a prison?
Yeah, as a prison, because the people that were there, weren't necessarily like criminals, right? So I think now we're not going to get into details, but the Marquis de Sade was there. Ooh. It's a little more adult. But Voltaire, who was a writer, and he helped inspire the French Revolution, was there. So, I'm gonna not butcher more names, but
I've already butchered enough. So,
but it's fun,
It's fun having me butcher everyone's name and the history of a whole country, a whole city there.
Not doing much better myself, but we try. A lot of like I said, it's political prisoners, as you mentioned, and so I think that's the difference. And so I know the other one is the man who inspired Alexandre Dumas's book, The Man in the Iron Mask. There was a prisoner there. Okay. Eustache Daguerre. Okay. We're going to say. He inspired The Man in the Iron Mask.
Okay.
So if you ever see the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, I believe.
I try not to see his movies.
So there's definitely a lot of
I've got religious reasons why I don't want to see his movie.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's none.
Okay.
But I just haven't seen it.
I didn't know. I was like, I don't know if I should go down that path. But anyway, so there's definitely, I think in the later years, especially around the revolution, a lot of those prisoners were, again, inspiring the French people. And so there's been a lot of stories written about the prisoners there.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to regain my confidence before we continue on here.
And I will lose my confidence.
And I'm going to listen to Rebecca butcher some names then for a little bit. And we'll be right back. On guard.
I like it. That was perfect. Okay. So we just have some there's just a couple interesting ghosty stories related to the Bastille. And I don't know if part of it's because it doesn't exist anymore.
Wait, don't say that I went through all of that history for there just to be a couple of things that you're going to talk about.
I mean, that's where we're at. But they're a little bit more than your typical stories.
All right.
So now this is a little bit shorter version of this tale than I could be reading. Okay. But I figured we don't have all day. So, so author Chris Woodyard tells the story of Louis Sebastien Mercier, who was a member of the assembly that governed France during the Revolution and witnessed and a witness that reportedly saw and met with King Louis XVI 1 year after he was beheaded. Oh. So he told the story actually several times. And again, there's longer versions of it out there, but this is what he said, the main part. In the carriage, there was seated a man who I immediately recognized to be Louis XVI. Having approached near to me, the carriage stopped, and the king beckoned to me to advance. I did so, and he said to me, "You did not vote for my death. For that, you may be thankful for the sake of your own peace of mind. I was sacrificed, and France will pay dearly for shedding the blood, which I should not regret had it been spilt for her happiness and glory. Most of my assassins will die on the scaffold or in exile. All will be victims to soul-torturing remorse. The government will pass from the hands of one set of tyrants to those of another, until, at length, my family will reascend the throne and close the abyss of revolutions."
Okay. All right. So I'm going to say that maybe he saw somebody that was related to the king, to the late king. And I'm going to say that this is pretty long time ago, so there's not much we can do to debate this. I mean, it was written, so maybe he wanted to convey some kind of message.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little weird. There's not a lot of details as far as it's pretty specific. He's like, no, this was him.
Yeah, but I mean, this is also in a really, really volatile time. Mm-hmm. Could be like enemy propaganda.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It seems a little specific. Yeah. a little too. I mean, I have a hard time with this. Like, I want to believe. I do. But
It just seems like a lot of detail for him to remember every single word that this person said to him.
And it's truly like, like it's not me saying that you're all going to regret killing the king.
Yeah.
I saw him though.
Yeah, he said that. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
And the fact that this is old, I mean, this happened like a year after.
Yeah.
So I
don't know why the ghost would have to be in a carriage too. So there was just a lot of things. I don't know. It's like, can't they just float around and
like
fly?
there would be other people around then. Yeah, I don't know. It seemed a little. Yeah. So even for me, this one's a little suspicious.
All right.
So
I'm going to give it a 0.
I'll give it a 1 just to be nice.
Whoa,
but
Rebecca, you've never given this low of a score.
I know.
People, remember this day. This will never happen again in the history of Ghostly. Rebecca gave a 1.
Yes. That's how sus this story is.
Wow.
For my own reputation.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Yeah, but also I think he was probably trying to sell the story too. So
yeah,
he's an author. That's what they do.
And actually, that is kind of true. So
yeah,
okay. So
wow.
Here's our next one. This is the tragic tale of Jean de Arbanville. I don't know. It sounded kind of German. Sorry. Okay, so not all the ghosts of the Bastille are vengeful.
Oh, good.
Or like privileged, uncaring.
Yeah.
So there's one supernatural story that tells the tale of Jean d'Arbanville, the son of the Marquis de Bastille.
The Marquis.
Yeah. de Bastille. So he was said to be a kind-hearted aristocrat, and Jean would secretly give money, toys, and gifts to the women and children in the Bastille.
Aww.
So he would visit.
He'd give toys to the women?
Toys and gifts.
Oh, okay.
Money, toys, and gifts to the women and the children.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is sad to think that there were women and children being kept in the Bastille. So.
Yeah.
He would visit with them, make friends with them. When his father, the Marquis, discovered what was going on in the prison, he banished his son from the place, never to return.
Oh, that's the one. Mm-hmm. That's the one that was imprisoned, huh?
Well, no, he was told he could never go back.
Oh, he could never go back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but Jean would not abandon the children that he cared for. So he would disguise himself and visit in secret.
Oh.
And this kept the children happy and their spirits up until one fateful day when Jean was at the Bastille against his father's wishes. The prison was breached by angry revolutionaries. This again sounds like another anti-revolutionary story. Anyways, and the other prisoners began yelling to be saved. When the rebels discovered Jean, they pulled him away from the protesting and crying children, and he was executed along with many other noblemen.
Wow.
So it is now said that if sad children go to the site of the Bastille and speak Jean's name, he will return to them, bringing joy and friendship.
Okay.
So that was my story. It was an attempt to kind of how that could actually play out in the real world.
I'm thinking that this, though, reeks of like a lesson to children or something like that, or maybe to cheer up.
Lesson to the revolutionaries.
Yeah, to cheer up these children. Maybe it's like, don't worry. If you're sad, just speak his name and it'll make you happy, to appease the children or whatever.
Some aristocrats are nice.
Yeah, honestly. And this is definitely way too political. It's like when there's political ghosts like this, I'm highly sus because this could easily be both sides playing a game against each other here.
And it's hard. I don't know how true the original story is. I mean, you didn't come across it necessarily in your history, and you would think that'd be something. I mean, my guess is there's some kernel of truth to it, that this person maybe did exist, and he did sometimes, go against his dad's wishes and would be nice to the prisoners, but
I mean, I will say though that it had like 700 years of history, so I might have skipped some of the stuff in there, just because I mean I did do a half hour on the history of the Bastille, so
the 100 years of history, So I don't. If someone knows for sure if this guy existed, but as far as his ghost goes, what do you think?
0.
I could not find any stories of like children that went there and said his name and like were calmed, so
who still remembers this dude,
well,
it's
obviously it's out there in the history, so
okay.
I mean I'm gonna give it a 3.
I'm gonna give it a 0 again, and we're not off to a good start,
we're
Rebecca.
not off to a good start.
You gave it a 3, which is the second lowest you've ever gone. This, I mean, seriously, I don't understand how this is even possible, Rebecca.
I don't know. When we found this site, I it's listed under a most
prison.
haunted. It's a prison. It's 100 people.
Oh, but we learned doing the most haunted series that a lot of places that are most haunted are not so haunted.
Yeah, you kind of got to go. Yeah, well, I think we'll see. It was the last thing here is just people say in that area they feel eerie feelings, they have ghostly sightings, and they smell strange things.
Okay,
but there's no specific stories that I could find.
Okay, have you ever smelled a baguette with ham and Swiss cheese on it, cooked in the morning sun? It stinks.
Oh, I've never.
I'm going to say that's a strange smell. And
well,
that
if
might
you've been
give
in
people,
a city, you smell strange smells.
Yeah, and that might give people eerie feelings. Also, I bet you those people that have the eerie feelings know the history of that location.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's probably because they see that like we have a place here. I am not a Sox fan, but Old Comiskey Park has the outline of it as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Or at least like the first base and stuff like that. And it would be easy for people to stand on that spot and reminisce of the olden days of the Black Sox, So I'm going to say this is just a nostalgic thing, not anything else. The ghostly sightings, what kind of ghostly sightings? We would have mentioned that.
Just ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. So 0, Rebecca, 0.
I'm giving this one a 1.
What? 2 1s? Oh my God.
I know.
Somebody write this down. I'm going to forget all about this.
I know. I'm shocking episode.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so what would be your overall rating then?
I'll give it a 1.
I'm going to give it a 0.
I mean, it seems like there should be stuff there, but I think because they took it all down, the any spirits it was they won. The revolutionaries won, and so the spirits were happy. They went off to where they wanted to go, and there's no reason for them to have stuck around.
I will say, I don't know of many executions that happened. They don't really talk about that too much.
I think they were other places. Yeah. Again, this was not where
they came up with the guillotine.
We know if you want to hear about that, listen to our Ghostly X.
Which was probably more haunted than this place.
I think it might be, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the closing arguments. This is our last chance to convince you to vote our way. We are each given 1 minute of uninterrupted time. We will time each other on our own cell phones to keep each other honest. Are you ready, Rebecca?
Yeah.
All right. 1 minute on the clock and go.
So I think this one is, I don't what I was just saying. I feel like it would make sense that there would be spirits there because of all the, horror and war and prisoners and everything, over the years. But I think the French have done an amazing job where, they didn't linger with it. So many times, there's something, there's like a horrible place where bad things happen, and then, somehow it's overtaken or stopped or whatever, but we're like, oh, but we got to keep the horrible place because we want to remember, which, again, we can argue about that. I'm not going to argue about that. But I think when you do that, you keep the spirits there. And so in this case, because they took it down, and it was like the people that were in prison there were the ones that, were fighting for this. The spirits left.
All right. Well, you still had like 3 seconds left.
There you go. I had more to say than I thought.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. And go.
So the evidence proposed in this particular episode does not lead, anyone, I'm sure, to believe that there is any ghost here. it just goes to say that there can be spots that have a lot of history. This had a ton of history, more so than I even said, because some of it just, first of all, I don't know who these people are, most of these people, and some of it just seemed kind of boring too. So I just went with the good stuff there, which some would argue probably wasn't all good stuff too. So I don't know. This just goes to prove that just because we want it to be doesn't mean it is. And just because they say it's one of the top most haunted places in Paris doesn't mean it is.
All right. You had 15 seconds left.
All right. Well, hey, I want to thank everyone so much for listening. Please share us with your friends and family, as word of mouth is our best advertisement. Remember to hit that subscribe button. I don't know why you wouldn't have yet, but you should. Or follow us on YouTube or whatever. We are on YouTube, by the way, guys.
We are.
On the next episode of Ghostly, we're going to be talking about Notre Dame.
Yes.
And not to be confused with Notre Dame that we did an episode on.
Right. That's going to be interesting.
It'll be called Notre Dame
Cathedral.
Paris or Cathedral. Yeah. It comes out August 14th, but we have some VIP people that we need to mention here. Andrew,
Alicia,
Becky,
Kim,
Ernie,
Cindy,
Kevin,
Jessica,
Alice,
Aaron,
Hope,
Rachel,
and Candy. These are all our VIP producers. They are our backers. They got our back through all of this, it seems. So
we appreciate you more than we can say.
Absolutely. And we always want to give you guys shout outs. So until next time, stay ghostly.